zero. The wind is not blowing, it is screaming. A wall of frozen air moving at 120 miles per hour, carrying ice crystals sharp enough to strip the paint from steel. There is no sunrise here. There hasn't been one in weeks. The sky is not black, it is nothing. A void that presses down on the ice like a hand on a throat. And yet, something is alive out there, not hiding, not waiting for warmth, not clinging to the edge of survival the way every sensible creature on this planet would. Moving. Thousands of them, shoulder to shoulder, a breathing, shifting, living mass pressing against the Antarctic darkness. They make no sound you'd expect, no song, no screech, just a low, ancient murmur, like the continent itself is humming. Their backs are turned against a wind that could kill an unprotected human in 11 minutes. And on each of their feet, a single egg, balanced, precious, burning with the only warmth for hundreds of miles in any direction. These are emperor penguins, Aptenidites forsteri, and they did not stumble into this nightmare. They chose it. Every year, without exception, without fail. The most brutal season on the most unforgiving landmass on Earth, and they walk toward it. The question that has haunted biologists, explorers, and philosophers alike for over a century is devastatingly simple. Why? Before we descend into the frozen dark, if you are someone who finds wonder in the wild and impossible corners of this planet, subscribe to Biolume Science and hit the bell. It's how we keep the light burning in the dark. Now, back to our story. The year is 1902. A British expedition ship called the Discovery is locked in Antarctic sea ice. On board is a young physician and naturalist named Edward Wilson. He has heard the stories. The native peoples of the Southern Ocean have none because no human civilization has ever lived close enough to tell them. But the scientific world has barely glimpsed this creature. Wilson looks out from the ship's hull at a coastline of impossible desolation and asks a question no one has seriously pursued. Where do they breed? Every other bird on the planet breeds in spring, in warmth, in abundance. The emperor penguin's breeding sites had never been documented by science. Wilson suspected from limited observations that they must breed in winter. But that was, to the minds of Edwardian naturalists, essentially absurd. 3 years later, Wilson returned, this time on Robert Falcon Scott's fatal Terra Nova expedition. In June of 1911, the dead heart of Antarctic winter, Wilson led 3 men on what would become one of the most harrowing journeys in human exploration history. Apsley Cherry Garrard, one of the survivors, later wrote a book about it called The Worst Journey in the World. That title was not hyperbole. They traveled 67 miles on foot, pulling sledges in total darkness through temperatures that plunged to minus 77 degrees Fahrenheit. That's approximately minus 61 degrees Celsius. So cold that their teeth shattered when they shivered. So cold that their sleeping bags froze solid and had to be beaten open each morning. One night, a blizzard stripped their tent from the ice and they lay exposed, certain they would die. They were doing this to find penguin eggs. Wilson believed that emperor penguin embryos, being from such a primitive bird, might hold evolutionary secrets, a bridge between reptiles and modern birds. The science was later proven wrong. But what they found at Cape Crozier in that screaming darkness was something no European eyes had ever witnessed. A colony of emperor penguins, breeding in the worst winter on Earth. By choice. Cherry Garrard wrote, "I do not know why I am telling you this, except that I think it is the most wonderful thing I have ever seen." He collected 3 eggs. 2 survive today in the Natural History Museum in London. Unremarkable to look at, white, slightly larger than a chicken egg, but they are, in a very real sense, artifacts from one of the most extraordinary acts of biological defiance ever recorded. To understand why emperor penguins breed in winter, you first need to understand what they are. Not just a penguin, not just a bird in a tuxedo, a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering so precisely tuned to one of the most extreme environments on Earth that every single feature of their body reads like a solution to a problem that would kill anything else. Start with the feathers. Most birds have around 15,000 feathers. Emperor penguins have approximately 80,000. 80,000. Packed so densely, about 11 to 15 feathers per square centimeter, that they form not just a coat, but a wall. The outer feathers are stiff, hooked, and waterproof, locking together like microscopic armor. Beneath them, a layer of soft down traps a pocket of warm air directly against the skin. It is, in engineering terms, a layered composite insulation system more efficient than anything humans manufactured until the 20th century. But feathers alone are not enough. Beneath the skin, emperor penguins carry a layer of blubber up to 3 centimeters thick. Not just insulation, an energy reserve, a biological battery. Because in the Antarctic winter, there is no food. The sea ice that locks in around the continent in March and April extends hundreds of miles from shore, making the open ocean, where penguins feed, completely inaccessible. The male emperor penguin, when he walks inland to the breeding colony in April, has eaten his last meal. He will not eat again for approximately 4 months. 4 months. No food. In minus 60 degrees Celsius winds. He loses nearly half his body weight. Starting at around 38 kilograms, roughly 84 pounds, he burns through his fat reserves at a rate scientists have calculated at approximately 0.3 kilograms per day, emerging in August weighing closer to 20 kilograms. And the entire time, he is keeping an egg alive. The egg rests on top of his feet, tucked beneath a fold of warm abdominal skin called the brood pouch. The contact area between the pouch and the egg maintains a temperature of roughly 38 degrees Celsius, that's 100 degrees Fahrenheit, a pocket of tropical warmth floating in the coldest place on the planet. If the egg touches the ice for more than a few seconds, it dies. He knows this. Somehow, across 4 months of darkness and hunger and catastrophic cold, he knows this. And he does not let go. But survival here is not a solo act. This is where emperor penguins reveal something that most popular science coverage has only recently begun to truly appreciate. They are not merely enduring the cold together, they are computing together. The huddle. When temperatures fall and the wind reaches its most lethal velocities, emperor penguins form a huddle so dense that up to 10 birds can occupy a single square meter. Thousands of animals pressing together, creating a shared thermal mass. The internal temperature of a large huddle has been measured at up to 37.5 degrees Celsius, nearly human body temperature, while the air outside is minus 30 degrees Celsius or colder. But here is what is extraordinary. The huddle moves. Not randomly, not chaotically. It shifts with an almost computational precision. Birds on the windward edge, the coldest position, slowly work their way inward over time, while birds from the warm interior drift outward. The entire structure rotates, redistributing warmth with a fairness and efficiency that no central coordinator could achieve. There is no penguin giving orders. It is a living algorithm. Researchers at the University of Erlangen-Nuremberg published findings showing the huddle moves in coordinated waves, triggered when any individual moves as little as 2 centimeters. The wave propagates through the group at about 12 centimeters per second, a biological domino effect that continuously optimizes the thermal economy of the whole. Think about what that means. These birds, with brains roughly the size of a walnut, operating in total darkness, half-starved, balancing an egg on their feet, are collectively executing a dynamic optimization system. In real time, for months. No supercomputer was modeling this behavior until the 21st century. The emperor penguin had been running the program for millions of years. Close your eyes for a moment. Well, keep them open enough to hear this. Imagine the world as it was 3 million years ago, the Pliocene epoch. Antarctica is already cold, already locked, but the emperor penguin's ancestor is making a choice that will define a lineage forever. The sea around Antarctica is rich, impossibly rich. Krill in densities so thick that the water turns red-orange. Fish species so abundant that a single dive yields more calories than most birds consume in a week. But the surface world, the breeding world, is becoming a trap. Land predators, skua birds, leopard seals in the shallows, threaten eggs and chicks wherever the ice meets the open coast. Other penguin species cluster at the margins, vulnerable, losing chicks season after season. And then, in the grand, slow lottery of evolution, something shifts. A population begins moving their breeding season, not to spring, not to summer, earlier and earlier, until they are breeding in the darkness of full winter, deep on the sea ice, far from any predator that could reach them on land. Far enough that no leopard seal patrols the ice above them. The penalty is ferocious, cold that would kill anything unprepared. The reward is something invaluable: safety. The chicks, if they survive winter, hatch precisely as the Antarctic summer begins. The sea ice fractures, the ocean opens, and the parents, thin, hollow-eyed, but alive, now have access to one of the most productive marine ecosystems on the planet, right at the moment their chicks need feeding most. The timing is not luck. It is a biological clock calibrated over millions of years, synchronized with the rhythms of an entire continent. They chose winter because winter is the door to summer. Now, let us address something. Because popular culture, documentaries, nature films, even some textbooks, tends to frame the emperor penguin story as one of stoic, machine-like endurance. Robots of evolution, biological automatons executing a cold program. That framing does them a profound disservice. When a male penguin loses his egg, and some do, to the wind, to a stumble, to exhaustion, scientists observing colonies have recorded something that is difficult to describe without the word grief. The bird stands, motionless, sometimes for hours, calling into the dark with a vocalization that has no apparent function other than the expression of loss. Bereaved females have been observed attempting to take other birds' chicks, not aggressively but desperately, moving from nest to nest, calling, waiting. We cannot say with certainty what is happening inside a penguin's mind. The neuroscience of avian emotion is still developing, but emperor penguins possess a limbic system, the brain's emotional processing center, proportionally similar to many mammals. They demonstrate individual recognition, identifying their specific mate and chick among thousands of identical-looking birds using only vocalization, in total darkness, across hundreds of meters of wind. They know each other's voices in a roaring blizzard among 10,000 birds. That is not instinct alone. That is relationship. Research published in the journal Animal Behavior has documented that mated emperor penguin pairs show measurable reunion behaviors. Specific call and response sequences, tactile contact, posturing, consistent with what behavioral scientists carefully, cautiously describe as effective bonding. In the coldest place on Earth, they find each other every year. And now the tragedy. Because the story of the emperor penguin is not only ancient, it is urgently present. The sea ice that emperor penguins depend on, for breeding platforms, for access to the krill-rich ocean, for the entire architecture of their lives, is changing. The Antarctic is warming at a rate faster than almost anywhere else on the planet. Between 2016 and 2022, satellite data from NASA revealed that 4 of the 5 known emperor penguin breeding sites on the Bellingshausen Sea experienced complete breeding failure. Years in which the ice melted before chicks developed their waterproof adult feathers. Chicks that cannot yet repel water, dropped into the ocean by early ice melt, drown. In 2023, a study published in Nature Communications Earth and Environment modeled emperor penguin population trajectories under current climate scenarios. The conclusion, stated in language as cold and precise as the ice itself, if current warming trends continue, by the year 2100, over 90% of emperor penguin colonies will be either extinct or in critical collapse. 90%. A species that survived 3 million years of ice ages, continental shifts, and mass extinctions, that evolved solutions to temperatures and darkness that defy biological common sense, faces a threat it cannot adapt to. Not because it is weak, because the change is too fast. Evolution works in thousands of generations. Climate change is happening in dozens. In 2022, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service listed the emperor penguin as a threatened species under the Endangered Species Act, a designation that was historic because no penguin had ever been listed based primarily on projected future climate loss. Not past damage, future damage. The science looked forward and saw what was coming. The question is whether the humans reading that science will respond. There is a deeper ethical question here that rarely gets asked in nature documentaries. We stand in a peculiar position with the emperor penguin. We did not hunt it to near extinction as we did so many others. We did not drain its wetlands or level its forests. We have never eaten it, worn it, or kept it in a cage. And yet, the cumulative output of our civilization, our cars, our power plants, our agriculture, the invisible arithmetic of 8 billion lives lived in comfort, is dismantling the only world this animal has ever known. From a distance of 10,000 miles, without ever meaning to. There is something philosophically haunting about that. A crime with no criminal, a wound with no weapon. A species collapsing under the weight of a world that never even looked at it directly. The men who first found emperor penguins breeding in the dark, Wilson, Cherry Garrard, nearly died to bring their story back. They dragged 3 eggs across 67 miles of Antarctic winter because they believed the natural world was worth that sacrifice, worth that suffering. What would they make of us? A civilization that has mapped the genome of the emperor penguin, sequenced its ancient DNA, sent satellites to count its colonies from space, and still cannot summon the political will to protect the ice it stands on. The penguin does not need our admiration, it needs our action. But let us end not in despair, because despair is the enemy of action, and the emperor penguin has never, in 3 million years, chosen despair. Every April, as the Antarctic autumn descends and the sea ice spreads and the sun vanishes below the horizon for months, something remarkable happens at the edge of the continent. They come from the ocean, from the deep, rich, abundant sea. They come onto the ice. They walk, sometimes 60, sometimes 80, sometimes 112 miles. That's over $180 kilometers inland. Into the dark, into the cold, in single file, like a civilization on the move. They do not know what we know about climate projections. They do not read journals or attend conferences. They carry no data, no models, no spreadsheets projecting the future of their ice. They carry only an imperative so ancient it predates language itself. Keep going, keep warm, keep the egg alive. And in that terrifying, magnificent, impossible act of faith, faith in each other, faith in the huddle, faith that the warmth you give to the bird pressed against your chest will somehow, someday, return to you, there is something that speaks directly to the human heart. Because we too are standing at the edge of a dark season. We too face winters we did not fully anticipate. We too must decide whether to scatter, each alone, each cold, each hoarding what little warmth remains, or whether to huddle. The emperor penguin does not survive because it is the strongest. It is not the fastest. It cannot fly. In almost every measurable physical category, it is overmatched by its environment. It survives because it has learned, across millions of years of brutal, unforgiving selection, that the only warmth worth having is shared warmth. The only future worth reaching is one you carry together. Somewhere on the Antarctic ice tonight, as you listen to this, wherever in the world you are, it is dark and cold, and the wind is moving at speeds that have no business existing on a planet where life is supposed to thrive. And 10,000 emperor penguins are standing in it, shoulder to shoulder, egg on feet, eyes half closed against the wind, waiting for a dawn they cannot yet see. 3 million years of evolution looked at the worst winter on Earth and said, "This is where we belong. This is where we build. This is where we begin." The universe is a story written in stone and light. Thank you for reading it with us at Biolume Science. Subscribe, like, and share. Until next time, keep looking deeper